Thinking about buying a Rivian R1S? This review could save you thousands or change which one you buy. My R1S is not the same car I bought a year ago. Two updates shocked me, one I expected, and one I had actually, given up on. And they changed how it drives, how it charges, and what it's like to live with every single day. Here's what's improved, what broke, and whether I'd buy it all over again. From someone who builds software companies for a living and sees cars as products that ship updates, not just metal. Can software completely upend how a car actually feels to drive and operate? First up, why Rivian's unique approach matters. Thankfully, we live in an age where the average car quality has gone up dramatically. Gone are the days of crank windows or no air conditioning. Virtually all cars available today, at all price points, offer an experience that used to cost a fortune or something right out of science fiction. Cars today are safer and more comfortable than ever. So where does Rivian actually fit? We're in the middle of a much bigger shift. What a car even is has changed right in front of us. From internal combustion engines to all-electric powertrains, from fully manual to cars that can almost drive themselves. Underneath all of it, though, is the shift most people haven't fully clocked yet: software-defined vehicles. In North America, a few brands are showing the preview of what's to come for everyone. Tesla, Rivian, and Lucid are known for being all-electric, but their real contribution to the automotive space is how they approach the software that powers the entire ownership experience. When you own any of these vehicles, the car you drive a year from now will be very different than the car you drove the day you picked it up. In fact, this shift in cars becoming a software development platform that just happens to be on wheels is exactly why Volkswagen Auto Group is investing $5.8 billion into a joint venture with Rivian. Driven by access to Rivian's software and zonal architecture, so that updates compound and the entire vehicle improves over the air. Not just screens and apps, but ride, suspension tuning, and even charge port door behavior can change. It's this very approach that means the Gen 2 Rivian R1S we are driving today is notably different in how it behaves, performs, and has completely different capabilities than the day we drove it home. Let's dive into what those changes are and what life has really been like living with the R1S for a full year. What's improved, what issues have cropped up, and importantly, would we do it all over again, or would we make different choices? First, I think it's important to know exactly what spec Rivian R1S we are reviewing here. Rivian offers multiple combinations of motors and battery packs that means that there are 5 different powertrain options you have when selecting a new R1S. Our particular trim is a very well-equipped dual-motor max pack Gen 2 R1S with all but one hardware option. The only hardware feature missing from our dual max R1S is the quote Vision package, which is an electrochromic roof option that can turn white with the push of a software button. A year ago, this feature wasn't bundled with the premium audio, and you can occasionally find similar oddball configurations in the R1 shop, but generally speaking, if you have the upgraded audio, you will also now get the special color changing roof. There are also a few other key hardware differences with our early Gen 2 build that have now changed with more recent builds of the dual max configurations. First is the headliner for dual max configurations is now a more standard textile as opposed to the micro-suede headliner that you now find only in the more premium tri-motor and quad-motor interiors. Second, the passenger side underseat cubby has been deleted. Third, an armrest, cup holder, and charging layout for the third row has been changed to a more simplistic design that has extra cup holders and no longer has an opening flap. There are a handful of other more minor things that have been tweaked or changed as the production line continues to squeeze out every penny of unnecessary cost that doesn't really impact the customer experience. But those are the more notable changes between an early Gen 2 build like what we have and we're reviewing today, and anything more recent, including the 2026 model year, which was primarily a move from the CCS to NACS charge port. Our configuration has the black mountain interior, and we opted to include the all-terrain upgrade, which comes with the air compressor, compact spare tire, underbody shield, and importantly for us, the 20-inch all-terrain tires that are 3-peak Mountain Snowflake rated tires. Unfortunately, the excellent exterior color is the now discontinued limestone, which in most lights is a bit of a light blue-gray color. That all-terrain package also gets you access to additional drive modes for soft sand and rally modes. Normally, those two modes are locked behind the software performance upgrade, which costs an eye-watering $5,000 to unlock the full power of the motors and also includes an additional sport mode. Considering the additional hardware you get with the all-terrain package, the all-terrain bundle is a far better value for those who are looking to get more out of their vehicle in both hardware and software. Generally speaking, I don't think the performance upgrade is worth it on the dual motor vehicles unless there are very specific incentives that significantly offset the cost of the software upgrade. We chose the dual motor max pack for the real world combo of range plus cost plus everyday capability. If you don't need 400 plus miles or the all-terrain package, the dual standard configuration will cover most users. As I mentioned earlier, one of the most defining features of a Rivian is the tech and software powering the entire experience. In the past year alone, Rivian has added hands-free highway lane centering and had the most dramatic rework of an audio system I've ever seen to revive an audio system that felt left for dead. More on those later. With as impressive as the first Rivians were from a capability standpoint, the switch to Gen 2 for the 2025 model year had a big leap forward in the capability of both the tech and software. The first thing most people notice in a Gen 2 Rivian is just how crystal clear the 11 cameras are that give you a 360-degree bird's eye view and make parking the vehicle easier than you'd expect at this size class. Those cameras are 4K resolution, high dynamic range, and 60 frames per second. In fact, the Gen 2 Rivian vehicles have the most megapixels of cameras on board of any vehicle sold in North America. With a total of 55 megapixels, they will only be outclassed by the upcoming R2 and likely the 2027 model year R1 models with 65 megapixels worth of cameras. I really can't overstate just how useful it is to have so much detail from so many different angles in day-to-day use of the car, from slipping into parking spots to changing lanes with confidence. High-quality, accurate cameras are certainly a thing of beauty. Those cameras will actually play a big role when we talk about autonomy and driver assistance, but more on that later. Next is the actual software stack itself and how intuitive it is to use. Rivian has done a great job coming up with a modern yet friendly design for the ecosystem within the car. Large, high-resolution screens make displaying information and access to controls quick and easy. There are many traditional car buyers who may be hesitant about owning a car without physical controls for things like temperature or volume control, and I can certainly understand why that may be. However, in practical day-to-day use, as the driver, it's easy to physically control the audio, such as skip, back, and volume, using the steering wheel controls. And coming very soon, there will be a proper Rivian assistant that will allow you to do the vast majority of car-related functions with a voice command powered by Google Gemini. In the over 12 months that we have daily driven the R1S, it has really improved dramatically thanks to software updates. Here are just a few highlights from the year of software updates to give you an idea of just how much has changed. This is going to sound like a lot, but I promise you this is just a sampling of what has changed, broken down into three main categories. First is comfort and usability. Rivian added matrix headlight functionality that dynamically adjusts to not blind other cars. They've improved climate auto mode behavior, scheduled departure for battery and cabin conditioning, color themes for interior lighting, improved pet comfort mode temperature control, tri-zone climate enabled for rear passengers, updated driver display functionality for more useful data display, automatic front camera park assist, loads of driver profile enhancements that remember settings per driver, go chime when the traffic ahead of you moves and you aren't paying attention, as well as auto tilting side mirrors in reverse. As for driving dynamics, their software updates have added rally mode for dual motor performance and all-terrain vehicles, many suspension improvements for low speed, rough road scenarios and performance modes, highway lane change on command, hands-free highway lane centering, 360-degree autonomy visualizations, expanded 5-lane and busy intersection visualizations, smart turn signals that auto-disable after highway lane changes, co-steer to allow drivers to adjust lane centering without braking driver assist, and a 50% increase in areas that support hands-free driving. As for the ecosystem at large, all through software, Rivian has improved DC fast charging speeds for fast charging from 10 to 80%, automatic fast charging grades based on real Rivian fleet charging sessions. They've added Audible, Apple Music, Tidal, and SiriusXM as media sources. They've included many audio quality improvements, including customizable EQ settings, Google Cast and native YouTube when in park, smart charging schedules for up to a 20% reduction in cost when charging at home, GearGuard live cam so you can view your car's cameras remotely from your phone app, wheel and tire swap plus tire mileage tracking, Halloween themes for holiday fun, as well as plug and charge support for Electrify America and Diana. All of these noteworthy improvements, along with literally hundreds of other bug fixes and more minor quality of life improvements that add up to a dramatically improved ownership experience. This is what I mean when I say this is not the same vehicle that we purchased just over a year ago, and it really emphasizes just how different a software-defined vehicle can be. By comparison, we owned a 2015 Jeep Grand Cherokee from August 2015 until August 2024. In that 9 years of ownership, that vehicle had a grand total of 2 software updates. One of them added in-car Siri support for supported iPhones, but it was so laggy and janky I never used it, and the other was a simple mapping update. That's it. By the time we traded it in, it had been disconnected from any signal for years thanks to the 3G network shutting down that it relied on for some of the premium services that we didn't even choose to pay for. Any other software updates would have required either a USB stick or even a visit to the dealership. But a software-defined vehicle? It gets updates wirelessly, just sitting in our driveway, roughly every 4 weeks. To say this is a revelation would be an understatement. The same was true of our Tesla when we owned that for just over 2 years, with things like auto-disabling blinkers that were absolutely brilliant, Apple Music, YouTube Music, blind spot cameras, green light chimes, and more. But given that Tesla is further along in their journey, it's fair to say that the level of improvement over 1 year with the Rivian has far outpaced the 2 years of change we had in the already impressive Tesla software cadence. There is, however, one big thing worth noting in the Rivian versus Tesla software comparison. While Tesla made less progress than Rivian did in the same amount of time, Tesla was often far better at being very linear in their releases. That is to say that Tesla was better at delivering new features and software releases that were almost always an improvement. Rivian appears to be making such large strides that their quality assurance for each release often struggles a bit. This was especially true in the first 6 months of ownership, where I noted that if Tesla was beta software, then Rivian was alpha software. Out of the many hundreds of documented and undocumented bug fixes that Rivian has released over the past year, a not insignificant number of those were introduced in the version just before the latest build. This tug of war between new features and new bugs made many new releases feel like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I do want to give Wasim and Rivian's software team credit here though, as the rate of smooth improvement has seemingly been on the upswing, and many of the more recent releases have come with fewer and fewer bugs. In a bit of irony, I often notice that the biggest spike in bugs comes just before something big gets wholesale replaced. A good example of this was the mapping solution powered by Mapbox, which introduced several extremely annoying bugs in the versions just before the full-blown Google Maps solution came in to replace it. Being a software CEO for roughly 15 years now has taught me that Rivian clearly was working on these big sweeping changes for long periods of time, so it's not like they just decided to switch things up because of the bugs. But it also tells me that they are merging code bases and cleaning things up before doing a drop-in replacement. Things tend to get worse before they get a whole lot better. The same feels true with the Alexa integration at the moment, which should be replaced by the Gemini-powered Rivian Assistant any day now. Even with all these relentless improvements though, nothing has caught the attention of Gen 2 owners more than the Rivian premium sound system. Unfortunately, it is notable for all the wrong reasons. As I pointed out in my 6-month review, when we first got the R1S a year ago, the upgraded premium sound system was an absolute abomination. It was easily the worst sound system I had ever heard at any price point from any automaker. The sound was so inexcusably bad at launch that it was as if someone took a cheap speaker from Timo, wrapped it in a wet dog towel, and shoved it deep inside the dashboard. Overall, the original sound signature was muddy, and Soundstage appeared as though it was the speaker tucked up under the dash. I tried and tried to improve the sound system by tweaking the EQ like a deranged scientist, and that kinda sorta helped. But it wasn't until Rivian finally took the issue seriously and started to ship major audio changes in many different software updates that things finally started to actually improve the audio experience. As of software update 2025.34, I'm happy to say that the audio performance has improved dramatically. So much so that it's a real head scratcher as to just how Rivian dropped the ball on this system at launch. We finally have some low end showing up, and we at least have the ability to customize each built-in EQ, as well as 2 additional custom EQs, all tied to our driver profiles. Now, this sound system still isn't going to win any awards as a class-leading sound system, and it certainly isn't going to impress for being the same sound system that's all the way up in the $120,000+ range R1S quad motor, but it is at least finally pleasant to listen to for most genres of music most of the time. And the amount of progress they've made in taking such a truly awful sound system and bringing it up to a solid B is commendable. It does mean though that if you care about audio quality at all, the premium sound system to me is an absolute bare minimum requirement, and Rivian should be ashamed of selling the base system in the R1 lineup. The fact that you could spend over $104,000 on a dual motor R1S with a few color options and still not have the premium sound system, which is the only one that comes with a subwoofer, is absolutely criminal in my mind. The premium system sounds good enough now to be enjoyed, but in my opinion should be the minimum sound system and not the version you pay thousands of dollars extra to get into. If you want to play with EQ and try to get more performance out of your Gen 2 premium audio, here's the EQ I currently have set after the 2025.34 update. Feel free to try this and adjust to your individual taste, and make sure to turn spatial audio off for the most consistent soundstage, and then upmix the stereo tracks to get the ceiling speakers involved. Hopefully we will see the return of higher quality drivers and even more advanced tuning for the Rivian environment that leads to a sound system fitting the caliber of these vehicles. Audio is just one of two areas where Rivian really falls short of delivering a premium experience for their premium price tag in an otherwise wildly impressive vehicle. The next section I want to cover is a tale of two sides: charging and range. Our Max Pack vehicles have a usable battery capacity of around 140 kilowatt hours, which is on the larger side of what's on the market. While this far exceeds the average big battery you see from other automakers, the Tesla Model X has 98 kilowatt hours, for example, it doesn't come close to the objectively massive batteries you find in the long-range GM vehicles that can go as high as 205 kilowatt hours, an over 46% increase in size to brute force their way to big range numbers. But usable battery capacity is only part of the story, as capacity times efficiency gives you real-world range. And while the more brick-like shape of the Rivian R1S is certainly less aerodynamic than you find in, say, the egg-shaped Model X, the trade-offs are pretty significant in what you get in exchange. For a trade-off in energy efficiency, you get dramatically more interior volume, far more capable configuration with much improved ground clearance, drive modes, wheel options, and more. To give you a quick comparison of what the three long-range SUVs can achieve for their battery size, here's a quick table to give you an idea of where Rivian stands. With the Model X's 98 kilowatt hours, it's rated for 352 miles of range. The Rivian's R1S 140 kilowatt hours is rated for 410 miles of range, and the Cadillac Escalade IQ's 205 kilowatt hours is rated for a staggering 460 miles of range. In many ways, this puts the Rivian R1S as sort of the Goldilocks for energy capacity, range, and capability. I can attest firsthand that this massive battery is so incredibly useful. Our Max Pack configuration has all-terrain tires on it that drop the range from 410 miles to 370 miles with a 100% charge. That means for long road trips or when we have a jam-packed day full of places to go and are bringing the dog along with us that uses the pet comfort mode, more on that later, we will have plenty of range to spare. Plus the fact that Rivian range estimates have been quite accurate, which was decidedly not our experience when we owned a Tesla, it really adds confidence that the big range numbers are both real and something we could count on. Packing all those extra kilowatt hours made our summer 5,230 mile road trip far less stressful because it meant we could load up with more energy at selective charging stops to completely eliminate range anxiety. This allowed us to freely travel in more charging sparse areas, such as Wyoming, without being too concerned about speed or efficiency as much as we would have been in our previous Tesla with far less capacity. However, all that battery capacity doesn't come without a gotcha. Unlike the GM vehicles, who have taken a more robust thermal design, coupled with high voltage system to enable super fast charging speeds, which can often more than make up for lost efficiency, Rivian is built more similarly to Tesla with a traditional 400 volt platform. Coupling this 400 volt charging with a thermal management system in the R1S that is frankly inadequate to either properly shed or add heat to keep the battery at optimal temperatures negatively impacts charging session length. If you're in more temperate climates like we are here in the Pacific Northwest, it's not really much of an issue at all. However, during that long 5,230 mile road trip in June of 2025, we quickly found the thermal limits of the battery when attempting to charge in warm weather. Really hot locations such as Moab, Utah, and large chunks of New Mexico and Texas really illustrated just how the battery was unable to shed enough heat from the pack for an optimal charging experience. Thanks to our analytics tracking and a great service called Rivian Roamer, which you can get a free month using my referral link here, you can actually see the charging speeds that dump power when the battery gets too hot. It seems pretty clear that the double stack of battery cells and a single thermal plate between the two layers is inadequate for moving enough thermal mass in or out of the battery. This problem is absolutely made worse when the car tries to do any cabin cooling during the charging session. and often in those warm conditions, the glass roof acts like a greenhouse, heating up the cabin and pushing the thermal problem to even new heights. While users of the Vision-equipped vehicles claim that the electrochromic roof helps reflect some of that heat from the cabin, Rivian's own statements say that this feature has no meaningful impact on cabin temperatures. Thankfully, there is a solution that can help mitigate the thermal overhead of the cabin. This brings us to the sponsor of today's video, Vion. Vion makes premium Rivian accessories, including a high-quality roof sunshade product and activated cabin air filters for both the Gen 1 and Gen 2 Rivian R1S and R1T. Utilizing an effective dual-layer design to achieve full blackout and highly reflective properties to reject as much sunshine and heat as possible from entering the cabin of your vehicle, Vion's design is highly effective. The install is quick and easy, utilizing clips along the outer edge of the panoramic glass roof while making the sunshade itself two pieces that are far easier to handle without becoming unwieldy, as you find with competing products. A simple magnet system draws the two pieces together for a clean, unified appearance that fits in well with the Rivian interior. Using a sunshade like this during the summer or when traveling through warmer climates will help reduce the load of your HVAC system, giving passengers and pets added shade, reduced noise, and overall energy consumption. I wish this had been available before our long road trip, but you can actually save 10% on the already affordable sunshades, activated carbon air filters, or other accessories at Vion.parts when you use the code TRAVIS at checkout. My thanks to Vion for sponsoring this video. Through over 14,000 miles, the interior has held up really nicely so far. The Rivian R1S is as welcoming as the day we got it, with the seats being a surprise MVP during the long road trip. We originally feared that they would feel too firm for extended drives, but that has not been the case at all. Two negatives for the interior, though, would be that 1. A slight rattle has cropped up on the driver's side door that we plan to submit a service ticket for. Pressing on the main door card makes the rattle go away temporarily, so hopefully this fix ends up being something fairly simple. And 2, somehow we got a small nick in the steering wheel material. Neither of these are major issues, but they are the only two signs of wear that you can even tell at all. Generally speaking, the center console wireless charging pad is still really disappointing in that it doesn't effectively charge modern iPhones at all, and instead just makes them seem to get lava hot. Rivian has said they are working on what would be a third revision to the charging pad that is rumored to have MagSafe style charging integrated into the design. How they missed this for the 2026 model year is a bit surprising. Until then, you have a few other options, including the charging solutions from Soonish for the more fixed solution that is actually installed, while adding up to 25-watt MagSafe speeds and retaining NFC support keys in Gen 2. Additionally, there is the T-Wraps drop-in upgrade to give 7.5-watt MagSafe charging with no dismantling required. If you do go the T-Wraps route, just note that the early Gen 2 vehicles like ours had a bit of a weird USB controller that struggled with power for things like laptops or dual phone charging out of the center console port. Rivian has seemingly updated this component in newer builds though, and if it's an issue in your car, it's a component they should be able to switch out for you so that things like the T-Wraps charger work as designed for two phones at a time. The exterior of our Gen 2 R1S, painted in the now discontinued limestone color, is still pleasing to walk up to, and the paint has held up to routine washes at home, road grime, countless bug guts on the long road trips, and getting off the beaten path. It has been on the unfortunate end of a few rock chips in the paint, but they should be easily remedied by the official Rivian touch-up pen sold in the gear shop. Should you be planning to keep your Rivian for a long time, I would suggest you consider front-end PPF for the nose, mirrors, and lower panels where rocks and debris are most likely to fly up from the road and hit that big flat front. If you end up test driving an R1S, you may notice that the doors take quite a bit of force to properly close. This isn't as much of a build quality thing as it is a design feature thing. The Rivian R1S is designed to be a terrific off-road adventure vehicle, and as such, it's rated for fording water up to 43 inches high when equipped with both the all-terrain tires and the right suspension settings. The only other notable thing about the exterior is the dreaded Gen 2 door handle squeak. After some use, and especially in warm weather, the self-presenting door handles can make a gross squeaking noise as they present themselves. This unpleasant noise didn't seem to be present on Gen 1, and it sounds like it's something that Rivian is aware of and will have a fixed part available soon. In the meantime, the best the service center can do is add additional grease to smooth the motion. I've seen similar outcomes of noisy handles in past Tesla Model S's, so this isn't exactly a new phenomenon for power door handles. However, it's one reason why I think the far simpler design of the R2 with the manual door handles may actually be preferable for the average consumer. Oh, and for what it's worth, the automatic wipers actually work great. If you've ever driven a Tesla in the rain or even direct sunlight, you'll know that this silly statement actually matters. Really quick, if you're enjoying this one-year review of the Gen 2 Rivian R1S, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. It helps the algorithm connect this video with other people just like you, and to make sure you don't miss the next video about Rivian, EVs, and the future of autonomy. Okay, so one of the hidden superpowers of every Rivian is their ability to change into multiple different personalities at the touch of a software button. The various different drive modes can quite substantially change the suspension feel, steering input, throttle response, and more. For example, Sport mode is never going to handle like a low-slung 911. It is still absolutely jaw-dropping just how compelling the Rivian can get in each of its dedicated drive modes. These aren't your wannabe sport or off-road modes. These modes genuinely change the entire characteristic of the vehicle in noticeably and very compelling ways. On top of that, being the software-defined vehicle and having electronically controlled components all over the car that Rivian can directly update the firmware for on a rolling basis means that these drive modes can continue to be polished over time. Throughout the past year, this has been true for most of the major drive modes, and as such, the Gen 2 Rivian R1S has become more comfortable and better mannered in many common day-to-day scenarios. Given the makeup of how Rivian was put together and designed though, don't expect a luxury smooth ride. The Rivian was made to go places and do things. As a result, the driving dynamics are actually far more impressive with how the vehicle handles off-road than on-road. In fact, both of our Gen 2 Rivians, the R1S and the R1T, can have clunky noises across various paved terrain scenarios, but then as soon as you're off-road, it drives in such a way that is truly impressive. Acknowledging the fact that the majority of Rivians will never, quote, kiss dirt, so to speak, perhaps this isn't the right trade-off for most buyers. But if you drive a Rivian in the places it was meant to go, you're going to be absolutely smitten with how it handles. It's worth mentioning that while the Gen 2 R1S has had a big leap forward in ride and handling versus the Gen 1 R1S, both of them still fall short of any R1T ever produced. Given that we also own a Gen 2 R1T and have a Gen 1 R1T in the family, I can confirm that the added wheelbase of the R1T makes it the clear winner for ride, handling, and comfort for everything but fitting into a tight parking space. Speaking of parking spaces, the Rivian R1S is a large vehicle, but is nowhere near the class of, say, Suburban or Escalade. It has been a bit of an adjustment coming from our prior vehicles of a 5-seat Jeep Grand Cherokee and Model Y Performance, but the bird's eye camera view and ultrasonic sensors help a ton. When Rivian updated the software to automatically bring up the bird's eye 360-degree camera when nearing objects at low speeds, it made parking in tight spaces so much easier. The overall size of the R1S being approximately 14 inches shorter wheelbase than our R1T means that the R1S feels like a breeze to park by comparison. What you get for the added size feels like a compelling trade-off though as well. While my wife and I have no need day-to-day for a big 3-row SUV, we have used the added seats to get friends and family to faraway hiking locations along with a few dogs. And with me being 6'4", the added length inside of the cabin makes for a truly wonderful car camping experience. There's plenty of room for both of us and our 62-pound black lab to fit comfortably in the back with our much-beloved Xped MegaMat Auto mattress, linked down in the description. Earlier I mentioned pet comfort mode, and this is one of those awesome features almost no one talks about, but it completely changes what's possible if you travel with pets. If you've ever worried about leaving your dog in a parked car while grabbing food or running a quick errand, this feature gives you peace of mind. Just tap the paw icon, set a target temperature, and the R1S maintains it, automatically using AC or heat with full cabin airflow. The center screen even displays a big Pet Mode Active message, so anyone nearby knows your pet is safe and comfortable. In real-world use, it draws about 1 or 2 kilowatts on average per hour, which translates to roughly 1 to 3% of battery per hour in mild weather. A little more in extreme heat or cold. The car's smart enough to manage it efficiently though, and you can monitor or be alerted through the Rivian app if anything fails. That combination of quiet electric climate control, clear safety messaging, and remote visibility makes road tripping with a dog effortless. It's generally one of the best examples of Rivian's software-defined vehicles philosophy solving a real-world anxiety with thoughtful code. My main takeaway for size is this. You will very likely notice the size, especially if you commonly park in a tight parking garage or on city street spots. But if you have any need for the added seats or added length to take advantage of things like camp mode, the cameras and added sensors help offset the size burden by quite a bit. Next, let's talk about the number one reason I said you should consider not buying a Rivian when I did the 6-month Brutally Honest review, and that would be Rivian service. Rivian has a death grip on their service footprint, so their ability to execute on service both in terms of quality and availability is a make or break experience for many people. Initially, this was a bit of a shock as we had numerous items at delivery that needed to be remedied. Things like a headliner defect, a dead interior light strip at delivery, missing spare tire, several panel alignment issues, and janky wireless charging pad install were top of the list. Ultimately, every single item was corrected by service, but some took a while. The dead light strip in the dash, for example, took more than 6 months to be properly fixed with a brand new part due to a supply shortage. If you're considering buying or leasing a new Rivian, or even looking at picking up a great deal on a used vehicle, the very first thing you should do is look up the proximity to your nearest Rivian service location. Unfortunately, you can't expect to get timely parts and service through a vast third-party network, so if you aren't close to an official Rivian service location, I would think twice before buying. Thankfully, many attributes about service have improved in the past 6 months since my last review. Rivian has publicly acknowledged the importance and bottleneck of both the mobile service fleet and physical service centers. They've promised to open many more service centers and rapidly increase the number of mobile service vans, mobile service techs, and do a better job of diagnosing issues through software. Here in the greater Seattle area, this has rung mostly true. Since my last review just 6 months ago, the number of available service centers has doubled from 2 to 4, covering more convenient areas to reach both north and south of Seattle. As a result, service times have improved if you are willing to go to other locations, and that has allowed us, for example, to rapidly get our windshield replaced after a giant rock trip from our summer road trip. We've even had a few mobile service appointments for things like a 12-volt recall and a few other small items. But as great as this expansion in service is, it is still clearly lacking in 3 major ways. First, Rivian desperately needs to expand their certification for third-party repairs on common items such as windshield replacements. The fact that major providers such as Safelite can do a replacement, but are not equipped, at least in the Seattle area locations, to do the required camera calibration is unacceptable. Second, the mobile service fleet needs to be the biggest boost in capacity compared to the physical locations. If Rivian is serious about alleviating the strain on service centers and maximizing customer convenience, the mobile service fleet needs to improve dramatically. Tesla is a wonderful example of how an effective mobile service team can operate, and it's one of the best parts about being a Tesla customer. Until this benchmark is hit, Rivian should feel compelled to continually improve. Third is pricing. I fully understand and respect the fact that Rivian is facing a daunting cash crunch, and that historically service centers produce a significant portion of profits for the traditional dealership model. But Rivian's prices for service and parts borders on the extreme and tiptoes towards the intolerable. A prime example is the windshield replacement from earlier. Unfortunately, we've had to replace our R1S windshield twice just a few months apart. This was a risk we knew going into a long cross-country road trip. However, the price jumped between visits by nearly $400, between an increase in labor hourly rates and a jump in materials costs. This was enough that our insurance company, which is USAA, which has been historically great to work with, only covered most of the second replacement due to what they deemed as excessive costs. And frankly, I don't blame USAA here. Such a big jump in the same service with just 2 months apart is pretty wild. And the fact that well-known networks such as Safelite are not properly equipped to calibrate for cruise control and other safety features is a huge problem. These excessive repair costs, a singular source for parts, and extremely limited availability are still a cause for concern. However, Rivian has made big strides here on increasing their overall service footprint at significant capital expense, so they do at least understand the importance of a robust service network. I would expect this trendline to continue to improve, but it is still one of the largest areas I would be looking at when considering the jump to any Rivian. One last bit somewhat related to service is recalls. A funny thing about software-defined vehicles is that you'll get mail about recalls that are not only completely software-based, but have actually already been resolved in an update before the mail reaches your house. There are certainly examples of that with our Rivian R1S, as there were when we had our Tesla Model Y Performance. But there are also hardware issues based on known suppliers, from 12-volt battery recalls to headlights or sensor performance in cold weather and more. It feels like there is a steady trickle of recall notices being sent to us, and often in duplicate given that we have similarly aged early builds of the Gen 2 R1S and the Gen 2 R1T. Could this be a function of being early builds for Gen 2? Quite possibly. But it also seems like Rivian's pursuit of cheaper and cheaper mixed supplier bases have led them down to an increased number of problematic suppliers for various parts. To their complete credit, they have fully resolved the parts as resolutions become available, but they've batched other updates as customer satisfaction campaigns to preemptively replace parts that they think may be an issue later on. This may be the kind of thing where new models, after any new big changes or even brand new models are introduced, becomes a good idea to skip should you plan to keep the vehicle for long term. Next, we have a section that a small subset of you will care about a lot and some of you will not care about at all, and that is the Autonomy platform. If you don't care about really advanced safety systems or semi-autonomous features, go ahead and skip to the next chapter. But if you do care about this stuff like I do, then what Rivian is doing with Gen 2 and beyond is starting to get super interesting. When Gen 2 launched in mid-2024, the autonomy features were barely indistinguishable from Gen 1, other than being able to complete a lane change on command. Everything else about it was pretty similar between Gen 1 and Gen 2. The same operating area restrictions, the same hands-on wheel requirement, and very similar performance for things like traffic-aware cruise control, etc. There was a very good reason for that, because Gen 2 vehicles were shipping with both an ever so slightly upgraded suite from Mobileye, the same maker of Gen 1 autonomy, and they had their own NVIDIA Drive Orin chips on board. At launch, Gen 2 was barely using the NVIDIA chips for just about anything other than visualizations and to start training their own in-house models for autonomy. Slowly at first, we started to see some gradual improvements as Rivian leveraged both systems and started handing off more jobs to their in-house solution. This process delivered things like hands-free lane centering, much improved lane change behavior, improved cut-in performance, vastly improved visualization, and more. What we started to see now in the second half of 2025, though, is a clear increase in pace for new or improved features. This all really started with the update 2025.26, when Rivian finally had improved their in-house models enough to completely drop the use of Mobileye cameras that shipped on Gen 2 vehicles. New builds rolling off the line are expected to drop the Mobileye hardware entirely, and now we are slated for a proper AI and autonomy day on December 11th, 2025. Rivian's confidence has gone up dramatically in what they think the current hardware set can do, and that it can do it soon. While we learn more at the December event, it seems clear that Rivian's autonomy team is targeting some ambitious goals to bring Gen 2 and newer into competition with Tesla FSD within the next 12 months. Rivian has repeated the expectation that we will see completely unmapped lane centering, adjacent traffic awareness, and even point-to-point autonomy coming to Gen 2 vehicles. These more advanced features, though, are expected to be behind a paid upgrade for the Rivian Autonomy Platform Plus that is currently on an extended free trial for all Gen 2 owners. Not everybody's going to be excited about their cars doing more of the driving in more places, but it seems very likely that we will see the option for point-to-point driver assistance within the next 12 to 18 months. And given just how impressive many of the very latest features have been on rapidly improving smoothness and reliability of things like lane change and traffic-aware cruise control have been, I'm very bullish on where they can push this hardware as well. In fact, I'd go so far as to say that Gen 2 adaptive cruise control is one of the best options on the market today, second only to Tesla's most expensive FSD package. Rivian far outpaces basic Tesla cruise control, which is the same software that controls speed and distance for autopilot. The reality is, though, that eventually even the powerful cameras and compute that is shipping on Gen 2 will be left behind, but I don't think we'll see as stark a contrast as to what was left behind in Gen 1. I do wish Rivian would more properly acknowledge that they overpromised and underdelivered for Gen 1 owners, and I also hope for a future where at least the compute portion of a vehicle is more modular to allow for future upgrades. But we do live in an exciting time where the capabilities of Gen 2 should be extremely compelling for those who care about safety of their vehicle and advanced driver assistance. So the biggest question is, if I were in the market today, would I do it all again? The Gen 2 Rivian R1S has been a really great vehicle to own, drive, and actually live with. The overall packaging and capability makes for a really compelling package overall, and even with the shortcomings I've mentioned in this one-year review, it's one of the best vehicles I've ever owned. At the time we purchased our dual motor max pack Gen 2 Rivian R1S, this was the best spec we could get at the time for the best deal. But now that we are into the 2026 model year and we have the full lineup available from the standard dual motor all the way up to the quad motor trim, I would probably recommend something a little different. If you're looking at getting into a Rivian R1S, the best value by far is easily the standard dual motor configuration with an upgrade to the premium audio system. You get so much vehicle for the money at this trim level that it frankly makes the rest of the lineup look bad by comparison. For that entry-level configuration, you're getting a vehicle that can charge to 100% daily, has the same interior as the two more expensive dual motor trims above it, but it has a price in the 70s. Unless you're looking to really push the outer bounds of maximum range, this is the right trim for the majority of buyers. Unfortunately, the large pack option for Gen 2 is a decidedly worse value than it was for Gen 1, even at similar prices, due to the smaller battery. And the dual motor max pack starts getting pretty expensive as you start going up the options ladder. The number one thing I wish our dual motor max pack vehicle had was a change in the key up drive mode for full-time all-wheel drive with no automatic disconnect as the default behavior, and to remember the standard suspension height versus going into auto after just 12 hours. For that reason alone, I think if you are looking at adding options to the bigger battery packs, I would encourage you to see if you can swing all the way up to a tri-motor. Almost no one needs the added power that is offered in the tri-motor, let alone the quad, as fun as it is, but the changes to the default drive mode as well as the additional drive modes make it a remarkably different vehicle to drive day to day compared to any of the dual motor variants. Plus, the appearance of a big range drop for the tri-motor is a bit of a mirage because of the drive modes. Tri-motor has a conserve mode that operates exactly how the dual motors do in their default mode. And when you equip the R1S tri-motor with any 22-inch wheel, you get an estimated 405 miles of range with conserve. That means you're only giving up about 5 miles, or about 1.2% of range for the improved dynamics, drive modes, and more. So essentially, I'd be looking at going quite entry-level with the dual standard and upgraded audio, or I would stretch to go up to the tri-motor. If you're a performance enthusiast who will always pay more for the most power, you already know who you are with the quad motor vehicle. The quad motor's upcoming kick turn and rad tuner features I had the opportunity to test are super fun, but 99.9% of people do not need it. And second, even with the federal EV tax credit having ended for the lease deals we saw before, I still think leasing these vehicles is the way to go. EVs are seeing a lot of depreciation, and I think we're going to see some really rapid improvements for battery technology, charging speeds, and autonomy capability over the next few years. Since we are so early in the overall arc of EV technology, we are witnessing both massive depreciation and advancement that is more akin to early PC era than a more mature market. Leasing helps protect you from some of this and gives you the opportunity to ride the wave of improvements without being locked in long term. If you've been enjoying this 1-year R1S review, consider subscribing to my free weekly Rivian Recap newsletter. You get the latest news, reviews, and updates about Rivian, EVs, and the future of autonomy every single Friday to your inbox. Hit the link in the description to join for free. Speaking of new technology and future updates, nothing looms larger for the R1S than the soon-to-be-released Rivian R2. The 5-seat midsize SUV with a starting price of $45,000 is primed to be a smash hit. And while it won't have quite the capability, storage, or some of the party trick features of its larger sibling, it's lining up to be truly great. With so much of Rivian's focus going into R2, which is going to be make or break for the company, we can expect some aspects of the R2 to actually best its far more expensive counterpart. This includes the expectation of better battery thermal performance, more impressive audio, and a clever new UI paradigm using large scroll wheels to navigate the driver display. Plus, Rivian has announced that the R2 will have even higher resolution cameras, more powerful onboard autonomy compute, and improved processing for the infotainment stack, all for a price that is dramatically lower than the R1S. So, while the R1S will still be the better choice for those who need 3 rows of seating, more space, such as car camping when you're tall like me, or enjoy the air suspension for things like auto leveling and camp mode, the R2 is likely to be the better buy. Perhaps you will see a number of these advancements that are going to the R2 show up in a Gen 3 version of the R1S in the future. So, just to put a nice tidy bow on our experience after a full year with the Gen 2 Rivian R1S, we love the features, capability, performance, and utility that Rivian offers with the R1S as a whole. The software-defined nature, especially of Gen 2, means that Rivian has dramatically improved the R1S compared to the day we drove it home, and their roadmap for the future looks incredibly bright. We found that the battery thermals and audio performance to be adequate but unimpressive, especially at this price point. But the recent advancements for driver assistance and autonomy hints at a trajectory of improvement that I think is going to surprise the living daylights out of a lot of people over the next 12 to 18 months. If you're looking to get into a new Rivian R1S, the dual standard with premium audio upgrade or tri-motor configurations are your sweet spots for packaging and value. This is doubly true if you go with a lease. If you're planning to buy or lease a new Rivian, you can use my referral link in the description, and it gets you bonus Gear Shop credits for things like all-weather floor mats, chargers, and other accessories. It helps support the channel at no extra cost and gives you a nice little bonus for your new car. The link and my suggested configurations are in the description down below. I really hope you enjoyed this comprehensive one-year review of the Gen 2 Rivian R1S. It's been fun to put together for you. And if you're curious at all about Rivian R2, here's a must-watch video I think you'll find extremely useful. Until next time, stay curious.